real power players? Who is Trump really answering to? What is the real anatomy of power in the world? I'm seeing some really interesting things come out from that. Trump is just handing victories to the left. I mean, Biden was incredible for Bitcoin.
What we're seeing right now is this all-time low in sentiment.
I think the simplest thing is that the Iran war pretty directly suppresses the Bitcoin price. I think if the left gets in, then Bitcoin will be like a crazy high price within a few years. And I think if Marco Rubio or JD Vance gets in, it's just going to be more warfare. This whole thing with Trump really set America back because it re-legitimized the elite and their institutions. You're just watching all these fault lines being laid, all these flock cameras, and all these data centers. You have on the one hand these crazed Maoists, and then on the other hand you have these crazed Zionists. It's punch counterpunch, and it's just going to go until there's civil war, and that's where we're headed right now. I think the great mistake that a lot of wealthy people are doing right now is just taking the situation for granted. Their stuff is going to be taken by the state. So we're just seeing a lot of people living as a result of state and parental programming. You wouldn't have anything like this in a free society. And I think Bitcoin will get us there. I mean, unless...
All right, Mr. Stephen Franssen, thank you so much for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
Yes, so we talked last back in March, and much has transpired since then. And actually, these last 2 weeks have been some of the most tumultuous in Bitcoin since I have been around. And you have been a Bitcoiner for well over a decade. But I don't know if you're as up to date with the day-to-day happenings within the Bitcoin community, especially over there on Twitter. So there's been two big things. I wanted to see if it's left our echo chamber and has reached regular Bitcoiners, such as yourself. So the first is the Coldcard hack. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have. Yeah, it was a disaster. How much have they siphoned at this point?
Close to 2,000 Bitcoin.
That's a lot. That's big cheese.
$100 million. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brutal. Yeah, I mean, I had some privacy guru guys talking to me like, oh, you got to get a Coldcard. This is the thing to do. They got these little punch cards and you'll be safe, man. It'll be safe. And I was just skeptical and I never bought one. So that's a bullet dodge for me.
Yes. Yeah. And I won't ask you to dox your stack, but I mean, when it comes to Coldcard, they were the Bitcoiners hardware wallet, right? And there was a lot of hubris, especially from the CEO, the founder, saying that we are the best and talking down on all other projects. And I think it goes to show that in modern society, we often mistake hubris and overconfidence as skill, right? And competence, right? But that is not truly what it is. And I think that you have a lot of insight when it comes to that. What kind of drawings or lessons can we learn from this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I love that old saying in crypto, don't trust, verify. And there was this Q&A that the Coldcard developers were at, where someone had asked, like, well, how necessary is it to turn on this like randomizing function? And I'm not an expert on the technical ins and outs. But the guy was like, well, you don't necessarily need to use that. That's just like an extra layer. You probably don't even need to use that. And the only people that were protected in the Coldcard hack were the people that use that randomizing function. So I think it just goes to show, like, there are no guarantees. There is no social trust. Hackers will do anything they can, particularly anything that's digitally based. The barrier to entry is low for people, and policing is not where it needs to be, and I don't think it ever will be under this current system. And so, like, what downside is there for some hacker to just go after your stack? And Coldcard, I hope they're done for. I mean, I saw that their store was still open. That was as of last week. I don't know where we're at on that, but I think that they should just close shop. Ethically, I think that's the best thing to do. You were completely destroyed, and it's even in your own developmental like lectures where you pass over this thing. So we'll see. I mean, I think they're probably just going to stay open because that's just how everything is now. Business is really sociopathic, and people just forge ahead and try not to learn from their previous mistakes. So that is what it is.
Yeah, we'll see. I agree. I think it's time for them to close down shop. They're definitely going to be facing a lot of lawsuits, and it's really hard to see where they go from here. Do I think that the victims will be compensated? I mean, I don't think CoinKite has $100 million to give back to those people, right?
No.
And well, here's another ethical question that I want to ask you about this situation. There have been white hat hackers who have gone out and swept the funds of some vulnerable Coldcard So they are taking them for safekeeping. But of course, this leads to a lot of questions as to rightful ownership. They technically stole those funds, correct? And then how do you get them back to the rightful owners in the end? You, of course, spend a lot of time thinking about ethics and morals. Do you believe in the righteousness of white hat hackers, and should they do something like this?
I mean, I think, it is just stealing. And do you get a bounty from this? Maybe a 10% bounty. I think perhaps some people can justify that. I think that if you're involved in this kind of thing, I've known people in cybersecurity, and it is this thing that insists upon itself. The necessity of it is based on the fiat system, right? If we have competing currencies, you don't even necessarily have to make anything digitally based. And so people that are going out of their way to steal funds from others and then call it like ethical hacking or something like this, I mean, it's just predicated upon the premise that things necessarily have to be digitized. And we could trade in wampum for all I care. Like, I really would love to see currency competition. So, yeah. And then, if you are dealing in physical goods, this whole hacking thing goes away. There's no middleman really, apart from the historical tax man that insists upon his own self entering the equation. So yeah, I just want to see currency competition. Then this isn't just a guaranteed outcome. Like, if you are going to do digital currencies, then you are going to have hackers, white hats and not. And so let's just do away with that. Like, let's just open up the competition. But we're not allowed to, right? I mean, people with, you start minting your own currency and it's just a disaster. And several people have tried, particularly in the 20th century, and they were just shut down immediately. So,
yeah. And that's why Satoshi walked away, right? So you wouldn't have to deal with that heat. Well, another issue that we saw within the Bitcoin community as of late is the BIP 110 chain split. Have you heard of this debate and what happened?
No, I haven't. Fill me in. I just saw one tweet on it and I didn't look into it much.
So yeah, going back to last year, there's been lots of talk about core version 30 and their changing of default policies for the mempool. And the people who are against this, these BIP 110ers, they believed that core version 30 allowed for Bitcoin to be turned into a database, right? A place for people to just dump JPEGs and illicit material and muddy the water when it comes to Bitcoin's monetary function and purpose. So they made a plan, a Bitcoin improvement proposal, in which they would create a temporary soft fork for a year that would make it much harder to put this arbitrary data on Bitcoin. Well, they made a big stink out of it all over the last year, called everybody who didn't follow their plan a pedo apologist, and that they were Bitcoiners who were following core version 30 were participating in illegal activity for doing so. So they, this last Saturday, activated, and there was actually a chain split. So now we are 300, 400 blocks since then, and they are stuck 4 blocks on their chain. But that is what Bitcoin allows you to do, right? Anybody can fork off and create their own coin, but now they are, it seems, permanently stuck because they don't have the hash rate to move the chain forward. I mean, you've seen a chain split before, right? You've been around for Bitcoin Cash, and now we're repeating a lot of the same lessons today. So yeah, after that story I just gave you, what do you think about the situation?
Well, I think the thing that jumps out at me, this whole thing of pedo apologists and I don't know what is being loaded into the blockchain, or I don't understand this very well. It's magic money. That's magic money mode for me. But if somebody is engaged in uploading illicit material or doing something like that, then it's not intrinsically Bitcoin's fault. And I think people say there's a design issue here or something, and that's well and good. But you still have it's like a lazy way of just dealing with injustice, dealing with perpetrators. So if someone is doing this sort of thing, you can nail them, you can police them. There's not a lot of will to do that in society because justice is so ground down. And so again, then you have to tie that into a society basically being run by communists, globalists, whatever you want to call them. and they set the incentives for justice and for policing. And so there's nothing really intrinsically wrong with Bitcoin. Just people are how would I say it nicely? I mean, people can be malevolent and they will just use it they can exploit some feature that was never intended for whatever it is that they're doing. And they'll take advantage of that and put something in there but I'm just sitting and I'm hodling, man. I don't have anything to do with that. And, most people that are into Bitcoin, I think what we're at, like 64% of people are long-term hodlers that are into Bitcoin right now. So most people are not really beholden to that. Like they're just not involved in anything like that. So pinning it on Bitcoin, I think is just nutters. I mean, you can have a blank wall, right? You can have a blank wall and then someone can draw something nasty on it. It's kind of the same thing in my mind. And then we just go, okay, well, walls need to be redesigned so that you can't put graffiti on them. That makes no sense to me. I mean, it is what it is, and there's always going to be perverts out there that like try to exploit loopholes. So
always, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, Bitcoin is money, but technologically, it is a database, right? And so having a decentralized system makes it essentially impossible to stop all forms of spam. You can disincentivize it, but to completely stop it is impossible. And I think these people were sort of delusional in the belief that you could somehow do so. And then that brings us to the discussion of Bitcoin consensus. This group of BIP 110ers believed that if they had a strong vocal minority, they would be able to force the hand of everyone else, the exchanges, the large corporate miners, the holders who have hundreds of Bitcoin on their account that is verified by their own node at home. But they didn't get any of that. So that's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, is that you need overwhelming consensus to change it. And that's what protects it, right? That is why governments can't just run up a bunch of nodes on their own and say that we're only going to allow these kinds of transactions. So in terms of this consensus model of Bitcoin, is there anything else in the world that you could compare it to? And what do you think in terms of governance for a decentralized system like this?
Oh my gosh. Is there anything I can compare Bitcoin to in terms of consensus? I really can't think of anything. And then you're asking about governance, something about governance?
So yeah, I mean, consensus is governance in Bitcoin, right? And so, I mean, I think you agree that a limited state is the ideal version of human governance, right? And so is that how rules and the makeup of society should be determined by this sort of rough consensus of people? The parallels between politics and Bitcoin consensus is what I'm going for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I typically think that society should just be run by UPB. So like this, just a universalizing principle in ethics, where ethics apply to all people the same. That's how I think society should be organized. And so then you get into like dispute resolution, because that's the main thing that has to be arbitrated. It has to be arbitrated. I think that's a word. That has to be negotiated between people in the world. So, yeah, I guess Bitcoin is kind of like that. You have total ownership, and then you engage into negotiation with some other person, some other wallet. And I guess that would be somewhat similar to DROs, dispute resolution organizations. You're just looking at, like with a DRO, you're looking at an organization that you contract into, where you maintain a certain reputation and you maintain your contracts, you uphold your contracts or you don't, and you suffer thereby if you don't. And you have a reputation based on that. And then organizations themselves, which are like insurance companies, essentially, they have their own reputation based on whether they uphold their contracts or not. I was just sitting in traffic with my wife the other day, and she was saying, how nifty would it be if you as a driver could attribute demerits to other drivers? And we saw some like just terrible, 80 IQ driving. And she was saying it would be great to do a demerit on that person, because at a certain point you could get somebody off the road. It's tricky because everything's the commons, and so everyone feels they have a right to the commons. So I want to see dramatically more property rights than we have, dramatically more private ownership than what we live in now. And yeah, some kind of reputation system. I think the technology allows for it. and to see people actually face consequences for not upholding their contracts, which is not the case now. I mean, people are doing it. Like if you look at the what were the loans, these COVID loans that these people got into, and they're just pulling out all this crazy money out of circulation for themselves and damaging everybody else thereby, and then not paying back into these loans. I mean, it runs the gamut. I mean, Kim Kardashian took out like millions of dollars. Kanye West took out millions and millions of dollars, and none of these people had to pay it back. And this is just straight fraud, but it's allowed by the government. And so it's the PPEs, right? The PPE loans.
Yes.
So you wouldn't have anything like this in a free society where everything was based on reputation and based on upholding your contracts. That's how I'd like to see things run. And I think Bitcoin will get us there. So it's just a matter of time. I think it'll be a couple of generations, but we'll be a lot closer. I mean, unless people just want to keep doing what we're doing, which is just thinking that the next person, the next charismatic that shows up that's promoted by the media and everything, that they're going to carry us to the promised land. It's just an enlightened despot. If there's enough charisma in the next enlightened despot, then yes, we will get to where we need to be. There's no thinking in that. It's just a lot of, it's like being excited for Elvis or the Beatles or something. And so hopefully this thing wears off in society and we can start to actually discuss how relationships actually work and how contracts should be upheld. And we'll see. I'm hopeful.
You're hopeful. Well, I mean, let's look at history, right? How many times have humans been able to form these relationships based on contracts and equal property rights compared to how many times have they just followed the charismatic despot? It's hope for the future. I think technologies such as Bitcoin can help us get there. But just the average person, the average American, if you even floated these ideas in front of them, would they have any concept of what you're talking about?
Yeah, it would be. I think you could get them there. I mean, it's a discussion of like, look at how you run your personal life. Look at all the voluntarism you have in your personal life. But then society is, I totally agree, Rob, like society is in total shit shape. And people are wearing their favorite vices on like t-shirts that they buy at like Target, like I'm into weed, I'm into video games. And that's the society we live in. Nobody's employed anymore and nobody reads anymore. And I get that. I think it's largely due to an expansion of the state. European people don't do well under captivity, and nor does really anybody else. And so it's important to not confuse the state with people's like general shit shape and think that people are just intrinsically that way. I think if you come from certain backgrounds ideologically, you can think that people are just intrinsically bad or something, but I don't have that experience. I think that when you leave people be and you don't abuse them as an authority, as a power figure, then they tend to develop quite nicely. And that dovetails into the peaceful parenting conversation. So we're just seeing a lot of people like living as a result of programming, state and parental programming. And it's pretty atrocious, and it doesn't give you much hope. But then you have to look conversely also at what the peaceful parenting sliver of the world is doing and the effects thereby, and then just extrapolate that out. So, but people are not to the point where they're in so much pain that they're desperate for a revolutionary solution. And the neatest trick, I think, will be by the devil will be to push everybody to that point and then offer another enlightened despot. And maybe we'll just have to go through that song and dance for another generation. This whole thing with Trump, I think, really set America back in a really huge way because it re-legitimized the elite and their institutions. And he breathed new life into that because people got so excited. The peasants all got so excited, myself included, for a little while. And that re-legitimized all these elite institutions that are just draining the life out of everything. So if we have to go through that one more time or something, no, but this time it's Trump, but he's a lot more hardcore. If we have to go through that again, I guess we'll have to go through that again. But my hope is that there is enough momentum in Bitcoin and in the freedom side of things and in peaceful parenting that we don't go just full Trump 2.0 or something. We don't go through that again.
How many apps does it take to run your life on Bitcoin? One to buy, one to send, one for Lightning, and another for loans. That's a lot of friction. Rhino replaces all of them. Stay to the end, and I'll tell you how Rhino can set you up with $21 in free Bitcoin. Rhino is a next-generation Bitcoin app built for actually living on Bitcoin, not just holding it. Buy Bitcoin with zero fees. Borrow against your stack without selling it. Move money globally on Bitcoin rails in minutes, rather than a wire that takes days. Buy Bitcoin with zero fees. Borrow against your stack without selling it. Move money globally on Bitcoin rails in minutes, rather than a wire that takes days. Set a DCA plan so your stack keeps growing, whether the market is up, down, or you're out touching grass. Bill pay, cards, and Bitcoin retirement accounts are all on the way. And your Bitcoin is never rehypothecated, never lent out, and never touched by anyone other than you. Biometric protection, 24/7 fraud monitoring, and you can move to full self-custody whenever you're ready. It's your Bitcoin always. Download Rhino for iOS or Android at the link below and use code BitcoinNews. Deposit your first $100 USD and Rhino drops you $21 in free Bitcoin straight into your wallet. At Rhino, you get the most Bitcoin for your dollar. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Trump and the Bitcoin community, he came to the Bitcoin conference in 2024 in Nashville, gave a big stump speech, and pulled the wool over a lot of people's eyes, right? And I will admit, I voted for him as a single issue voter, right? I wanted to see Ross Ulbricht set free. And that is actually one of the few promises that he followed through on, not too long after his inauguration in January of 25. However, since then, I mean, one thing we saw right along that time was the meme coins, right? He fleeced his most loyal followers for over $1 billion of their hard-earned money with this coin that has collapsed, of course, over, I think, 99% since its all-time high back in January of 25. And now we're at a point where this is an issue that can be used against us as a community, as Bitcoiners, right? They just see Trump, they see him as a Bitcoiner, they see him as a grifter, and that it just adds a harder time for us to try to convince people that, you know, this is freedom money. And yeah, he jumped on our bandwagon, we didn't jump on his. So where do you see Trump, crypto, and the Bitcoin community right now?
Yeah, I think it's very convoluted. The Trumps own like $900 million in Bitcoin. I think it's Donald Trump himself that owns 900, or his shell business or whatever. And Eric Trump is also massively invested in Bitcoin mining operation. And then converse on the other side, you have Don Jr., who's like just totally in with like Israeli arms manufacturers, and the latest, whatever the latest assassination drone is, he's like throwing money into it. And so it's a bit of heaven and hell with the Trump administration. Where do we even go with that? I think that I think the simplest thing is that the Iran war pretty directly suppresses the Bitcoin price, because you can't borrow against Bitcoin to run war. And you really want to just run to war stocks. If there's a war on, just like put your money in Raytheon and you'll be just fine. And all the rich sociopaths in America know this. And so they're just running it that way. And so we're getting someone that's like broadly capitalistic, like is willing to allocate capital in order to make gains. And that is just very different than the alternative, which would have been Kamala. And I think Kamala would have destroyed openly the country a lot quicker and would have sunsetted the Trumps. And I think that probably would have been a better course, even though it would have been short-term pain. So now we're in this hokey Trump world where they're just clearly setting up long-term traps to like get rid of as many peasants as possible. And you're just watching all these fault lines being laid, all these demolition lines like going in, all these flock cameras, and they're suspiciously like not being placed in certain areas. And you see all this back end, like all these detention centers being built and all these data centers. And I think it's really harrowing for people who believe in freedom. This Trump, MAGA thing is going completely in the opposite direction, but in a way it inoculates people. And the latest trick from the devil's latest trick, I think is something to piece apart and then to be skeptical of, to be inoculated against. So I think in the long run, like it'll be good for Bitcoin because people will say, well, don't put your Bitcoin in the hands of people like this. Don't put your Bitcoin in the hands of people like Trump. So that's my hope anyway. I mean, we'll see. It would have been different with Kamala. Kamala, I think, would have just tried to like seize anything. She just would have gone like Mom Donnie style and just tried to seize things. And that makes people resilient as well. So for every aggression, there's a response. And there's a weird kind of aggression with Trump. And I do think he hurts Bitcoin's legitimacy and with his silly optional war that he's running. But I think people will learn in the long run. That's my rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I guess you could say everything is good for Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when it came to Trump, one of the reasons why I felt comfortable voting for him just that one time in 2024 was because no new wars was his slogan, and he had proved it the first 4 years, right? Well, that has been blown out of the water. We are in full-blown conflict with Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. And the last time we talked, that conflict had just began. And at that time, I was pretty convinced we were going to see $200 a barrel oil by now. And you were also saying that, I mean, when it comes to all the petroleum products and fertilizers, that's going to lead to higher food prices. But so far, I don't know how exactly, but Scott Bessent has been able to do his magic, keep a lid on the price of oil, a lot of escalation, then de-escalation in timing with the markets to make it happen. But are you surprised at the financial impact or the lack thereof when it comes to Iran and what we're experiencing here in America?
Yeah, I think worst prognostication in the spring was that groceries would be doubled like a month from now, and that's not going to happen. But they are just finding every little wrinkle and every little give in the situation that they can in order to juice out these Middle Eastern wars as long as possible. And it is almost a testament to the productive people of America. Like, people in America are good workers. They're good earners, and all this is being done on their backs. Every little bit is being exploited by this administration. And I'm sure that they have some aces up their sleeves. I mean, I'm sure that they have done something interesting with the oil out of Venezuela. I'm sure that they have other machinery machinations that they're going to put into play to dampen the effects of this war on the everyman. And I guess, in a way, you can be glad for that. In some ways, it'd be better than having Kamala in there and just her boondoggling everything and getting really stressed out and flipping out at people. But the math is inevitable. It just will take, with the Republicans, I think it takes a little bit longer, and we just have to live through it.
I mean, well, looking forward, I've had plenty of conversations on this channel, and one of them was with Dave Weisberger, who's been in markets for decades, and he said the number one thing to send Bitcoin to $1 million would be a president AOC. We are seeing the rise of the Democratic Socialist Party in this country. Mamdani is, of course, the mayor in New York City. Talk to us about the rise of socialism, the causes of it, and how you think it's going to play out.
Yeah, socialism is hokey. It's like ever compounding. It's total madness. I mean, the boomers had a crazy kind of socialism, which was Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And these wars did, in a weird way, prop up real estate values. And then, of course, in the 2008 financial collapse, there was a massive increase in socialism. The housing market was single-handedly saved by Fed policy. And basically, these houses were kept in the hands of boomers. So there's this massive generational, how would we put it, collection of wealth, a gathering of wealth among the boomers. And the young people are looking at this, and particularly the ones that are like not very talented, the ones that like don't have a good work ethic, are going like, well, let's just use violence to get some of that for ourselves. And it runs both ways. So it's not, if you go through Fox News, you go like, oh, why are these young people so socialist? It's radical AOCs. It's these bogeymen. But it cuts both ways. Like, the boomers are really, really aggressive, and they vote as a block, and they vote for their interests at the expense of others. You can see this in Florida, with this funny governor's race. It was funny because I find James Fishback to be a pretty funny guy. But you have Byron Donalds, who, like, you go to his rallies, and his best rallies, it's all white-haired people. It's all boomers. And then you go to a Fishback event, and it's a big mix. A lot of youth. He really is won the youth vote. Anybody under 30 is going for him. And he is, I would say, he is not a libertarian. He is somewhere in the right, on the right wing side of things. And he wants to ensure that young Americans get ahead. And so he's doing exclusionary policies. And liberals hate exclusionary because it means there's standards, and then that some people have to be judged. And they don't like this. They want a free for all. They want like a hedonic free for all. But Fishback represents this idea that there could be an American middle class, a stridently American middle class in Florida, and that the boomers wouldn't be able to just pass over all their assets to these international conglomerates. Essentially, it's BlackRock, and so the boomers are all counting on that, and they're all voting for that. They're voting for just the most demonic stuff possible that they can, as long as it's of a Republican flavor. And then there's a lot of people that are young that are either hard left or they're hard right, and they're looking to get a redistribution of resources. But you have to remember that these resources were ill redistributed in the first place. The boomers voted for heavy socialism, and so they can't be squawking like wounded chickens because the young people want to claw some of that back. And so, you see it symbolically with, like, over and over, these boomer celebrities just don't leave any money to their kids. And how are their kids supposed to get ahead? You're essentially ending your bloodline. And so I think where it gets tricky with the left and Mom Donnie and AOC is that these people just showed up, and it's no real effort to just show up to a place and demand welfare and demand houses and take the houses from the old white people. And then what are you going to do with it? There's no path forward for society that way. But if the Republicans are going to be just so incredibly compromised that they start losing elections based on their blatant hypocrisy, he can't be surprised when someone with a much more hardline worldview, like the DSA people, come in and just take everything. It presents a kind of totalitarianism, and in that is a certainty. And I think in this waffling Trump sort of thing, where we run the war, we manipulate the markets as much as possible, there's a kind of waffling in that, a kind of sickly, like a lack of certainty, basically, and a willingness to play the demagogue and play along to people's bigotries while doing this thing whereas the left is just like, we're going to take it. We're done. There's end of discussion. We're going to start dealing with people violently. And there is some appeal to that for young people after all these generations of hypocrisy, this waffling hypocrisy.
Yeah, I saw an interview recently with a former leader in the Democratic Socialists of America. And back in the day, when that was full of boomers and that organization, I mean, they were union labor leaders, right? They were union leaders, and they had it was much more grounded, right? Well, they made a concerted effort to get all the older people out of this organization and lead it with younger people who are fully just embracing Maoism and Hamas and these extremist ideologies, because it seems as if this system isn't working and we need to go out and try something new. And another really interesting part of this DSA is that it's led now by downwardly mobile elites, right? Yeah. Those who went to Ivy League schools and then realized that they're not going to make as much money as their parents did, I guess, and thus want to take it out on society. How would you sum up the case of downwardly mobile elites in modern America?
It's brutal. I mean, it really comes down to the parenting. These elites, the boomer elites, they didn't invest in their children. They invested like monetarily, but they didn't invest with affection and with consideration, empathy, listening, encouragement. They didn't invest in these things. And so emotionally, these young people, the children of the elite, are wired in a really bad way because they have an animus, they have a resentment for the way they were parented, but then it's intellectualized by the institutions, and they have an intellectual basis. So they're completely disconnected from like the veracity of their own personal experiences. And so they're given over to an ideology that will allow them to do heinous things. And they're very certain in that. And so it is going to, in a weird way, it's kind of funny I should mention this, but Richard Spencer is a person who talks about, and I think he gets some of this from Dugan. He talks about hastening the eschaton. I mean, that's just straight up Dugan right there. But basically bringing about the Antichrist, like a bogeyman that is so terrifying to the average Christian chud that it will stir in the European people or whatever. This is kind of his take on things, a certainty and a will to power, a Nietzschean sort of reckoning with these people. And I mean, that's his hope. I don't think we have to go there. I think we just have to break down all the aggression. We have to break down and just look at the family. And instead of seeing the shadow cast by the family and looking into the intellect and looking into politics, I think we need to look into the personal. And I think that there are a lot of people with their grievances that if they could connect them to their personal histories, would not be so given over to these ideologies. But then if you go totally ideological, then it's like punch counterpunch, and it's just going to go until there's just civil war. And whether we go that way or not, I don't know. It's I'm not hopeful that there's going to be at least some of that. Punch counterpunch, and that's where we're headed right now. And the DSA is the counterpunch, and they know it, and they have all the energy right now. And Trump handed them a lot of energy. Trump had all this momentum coming into what would be his third term. I guess you're not allowed that constitutionally, but he had all this momentum, and he just completely squandered it. I mean, just having Netanyahu visit the White House over and over again, he was just handing every one of these times that he meets up with Netanyahu, he's just handing energy to the young left. So they're totally galvanized, and they're excited, and they're ready to roll, and they may succeed, at least for a time.
And a large part of the DSA mandate is redistribution, right? Taking from the rich and giving back to the poor. And when it comes to capitalism, redistribution really isn't a part of the plan here. It's creative destruction, right? If you make mistakes, if you bet into something, an investment that goes bad, then it should blow up, and thus the capital goes elsewhere to people who can treat it better. It seems as if since 2008, creative destruction is no longer allowed within this economy. Do you think that we could go back to that, or is it too late, too much debt, approaching $40 trillion in national debt? And is creative destruction even allowed these days?
Yeah, I don't know that it is allowed. I think if you're a small business person, I mean, good luck even getting a business loan at this point. So you're just kind of doing it. Everything is kind of being bootstrapped off of personal earnings. And the main people earning anything are people close to government projects, infrastructure projects, housing projects. Those are the main people earning anything. And then they bootstrap anything they do from there based off of personal earnings. These big institutions, all the loans are going to institutions. The income requirements for like mortgages even have gone up dramatically. They paced inflation. And so a lot of the entrepreneurial drive and the middle class business ethic of America has been completely displaced by corporate entities and by governmental entities. And they're all just one legal shell game wrapped up in each other. So you could almost say that it's like a fascist state, but it's like a liberal fascist state that we live under. So in terms of redistribution, I mean, the thing is, the people who seek to redistribute through coercion are not really all that good at capital allocation. And so then it's just a numbers game. It's like a racial headcount in some ways. It's a numbers game to legitimize that principle as much as possible. But then it just leads off a cliff. So for the good people of the world, I think it really is like just holding on to what you can that can't be clawed away easily. And this guy saying that AOC would drive Bitcoin up to $1 million a pop. I mean, Biden was incredible for Bitcoin. because everyone was so anxious about, he's like threatening people with F-35s or whatever, jet fighters. I'm going to get you, and so everyone's like tense and like going out into gold, and they're going to Bitcoin. So I think that it's all good. I think that these people are going to walk off their own plank of their own hubris, and we just have to live through some more of that. I think the great mistake that a lot of wealthy people are doing right now is just taking the situation for granted. There's so many decamillionaires that are just newly minted in the last 10 years in America, and they don't really have a sound economic footing for what is it they even were able to do. There's just was a lot of money thrown around in the last decade, and some of these people benefited. So I don't think they understand the fundamentals of how wealth is actually built. And the great mistake that a lot of these newly minted millionaires and billionaires is that they're not really paying for good propaganda. They're not paying for people that will champion their cause. And so they're going to go away because their stuff is going to be taken by the state, and they're just sitting there like sitting ducks. I mean, they're just like juicy, plump prizes waiting to be plucked. So I think that is going to happen, and I think the left is going to succeed at that to some degree.
Yeah, and I think that makes the case for Bitcoin even stronger, right? What we're seeing right now is this almost all-time low in sentiment, at least since I've been around. Like the energy towards Bitcoin has really never been lower. The new shiny object is AI. That's where people are getting all these fiat gains from right now. But people don't realize that Bitcoin is that disaster insurance. It is the asset that you want when others, including the government, are trying to get their hands on your wealth. And the case, I think, for Bitcoin has really never been stronger, even if these new decamillionaires are being printed from the AI trade. So Bitcoin will have a resurgence because it's never been more important.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think that people just have to learn through pain. I mean, people rarely listen to reason. And, I came out in the early wave of social media and was just censored. I mean, I just even had a video taken down today by YouTube. It just was never going to end. And as long as people didn't want to take that seriously and didn't want to be idealistic and doe-eyed and optimistic and take their ethical counterparts seriously, then the guarantee really is pain. And so I don't want to stand between people and the pain. This is why I got out of politics, is because I don't want to put myself in a position where I am like having to teach the bad guys through pain and then teach the good guys through like graft and enrichment or something like this. I don't think that's going to work at this point. And that's the people that are of that disposition and the willingness to do that are just going into a game that I think is already set to fail. And so why even load into that? I mean, I think Bitcoin and like income producing assets. There's this guy I really like, Doug Casey. I just really like Doug Casey. Doug Casey's been saying probably the exact same things for 50 years now. He's an old codger and he just says the same things every time, but he's so right. And what he's done is he's gone into like food production, and he's gone into like Argentina, Uruguay. I think he's got a huge estancia down in Uruguay. And he's just making beef, I think essentially for the Chinese, because the Chinese do decent business internationally, and they want clean products. They don't have all this trouble that America has. And so he's just making these things for people where he can. And I think he's also a gold bug. I mean, he's obviously a gold bug. He's a mining stock bug. And these are fallbacks. Mining will always happen. Energy harvesting and production will always happen. And so you don't have to play these games where you're doing the Berkshire Hathaway thing where you're like eyeing American companies and you're looking to see that they have sound fundamentals and then waiting to buy them and all this. I think that's even better. That's more responsible than a lot of what Trump is doing. But you don't even have to play it at that level. Like you can play it at a very backbone Kazakhstan mining level where you're just waiting out all the fruitcakes, pardon my French here, you're waiting out all the fruitcakes while society becomes much more sound again. And that's a Doug Casey style approach. And I really appreciate him for that. And I always look to him every once in a while to see what he's doing.
I agree. I'm a fan of Doug Casey. I've actually read his fiction as well.
Oh yeah, let's go. That's
speculator. Cool. Yeah. But the thing about Doug Casey and these gold guys, they've been right fundamentally, but also it hasn't played out exactly as they said it would. And I mean, I'm a creature of the 2008-2009 financial crisis, and I thought that we were going to have hyperinflation a lot sooner than a lot of these guys like Doug Casey or Porter Stansberry and Peter Schiff said that we would, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is a line you have to draw between being prepared and knowing which things are fundamental and will provide for a better future, as well as having a foot in this world too, because things are only getting more expensive, right? In terms of fiat. And if you are not going to participate, you could, I guess, be left behind. I don't know. Is that the message I want to send? Not really. I think Bitcoin is fundamental to it all, but you also have to, I think a lot of people can get mixed up with thinking, oh, the world is going to fundamentally change tomorrow, so I need to move everything, all my energy into a different world. So I just think there's a moment of caution you need to have as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the money masters, they make their own reality, right? So their ill-gotten gains, like they do hold assets themselves. They're the largest landowners in the world. I mean, so they, as long as they're producing income, like they're producing their own reality. And so the capital that they have pooled to be able to do that is fantastical. And so peeling away at that, by delegitimizing their means and educating people about their means is ultimately what takes away the runway and allows them to not create the reality anymore. And I guess there's a little bit of aggression in that. I think it's a little bit aggressive to, in a way, to like a central banker. If you're sitting there talking about peaceful parenting, in a way, it is a little bit aggressive. It's in their sense because it's taken away their livelihood. And so there is a dance there. And I think that any person in their right mind should participate in that dance however they can, to take away the option of these people to create their own reality. And until enough people do that, we're just going to live in their reality. But it's just so much better. It's so much better than it was a century ago. I mean, a century ago, you had who was even speaking about this? Like one priest in America, Father James Coughlin, I think it was. You had Ezra Pound, maybe. I mean, who did you really have speaking out against the banking cartels? It's like such a small number. And now there's, I think, millions of people. And so they create their own reality. We create our own reality. And there's a conflict in that for sure.
And the money masters definitely contribute to creating this reality through propaganda. And you do a lot of social commentary. I know you're on X. You've got a great Telegram channel. I advise people to go check out your Telegram channel. Lots of funny tidbits, but also, I mean, you're talking about the things that you see going on in the world. What is some of the most pertinent propaganda that you're seeing right now in the summer of 2026?
Pertinent. I mean, I think the stuff that's happening with the Tates is really relevant. I think that these guys, for better or for worse, have tried a fine line on some of the feminism, hyper-masculinism, whatever you want to call it. They've tread the line there, and they've done some dubious things that are really provocative to a lot of people. And these guys are being locked up and being held indefinitely for extradition to the UK on who knows what basis these charges are even have. I think that this is a hot button issue, and I think there's some interesting stuff going on with just people noticing Trump blatantly manipulating financial markets. I think it's fun to see people notice that. I think another thing that's really important is we live in so much apathy. Like, there's just so much apathy because people are demoralized. I put up this meme the other day of like people in the 1950s or something, they're dressed nice. And then that same family is shown in 2026 terms, and they're just all in sweatpants, and like the dad's in like a Carhartt t-shirt, and everyone's like a schlep, and there's just so much apathy going on now. And in the face of that, there's all this surveillance that's going up. There's this huge surveillance apparatus that is going up, and people are cutting those things down. People are trying to organize legally. I know there's a senator, I think he was really in with the COVID stuff. I forget, maybe it's Burchett, but it's also maybe Johnson, who they're involved in trying to ban these things at the federal level. And what does that say about what we're heading into if they succeed at keeping those cameras up? And now there's like an Israeli firm that specializes in falsifying footage from the flock cameras. and so what does this do in terms of legal terms? So I think that's some of the most interesting stuff. I do have one eye on this Fishback Donald's race. They're calling Fishback the blowback from Mamdani. And I do keep one eye on that. I think it's very interesting. I think he's an extremely intelligent person, and he's playing it to the bone. He's playing it the right way, if you're going to play it. So I keep an eye on that. And then it's kind of fun to watch these celebrities like shrivel up from their GLP-1 medications or whatever. It's kind of fun to watch them shrivel up from the Ozempic. And I think that's a little fun, like just looking at that, seeing like Charlize Theron just totally dried out. And then Anne Hathaway's like looking good because she's having children. I think that's kind of fun. I think women are kind of into that. I always try to keep one eye on what's relevant to women. Women drive a lot of the spending in this country. And for better or for worse, we live in that. And so I keep one tab on what's important to women. That I think is, that's some of the stuff I'm keeping an eye on anyway.
Yeah, I think the flock camera situation is extremely interesting. And it's the first time I can remember in my adult life of Americans actually standing up to the surveillance state, right? Actually taking physical action and cutting these things down. These towns cannot keep them up. They're being cut down as fast as they can be installed. What do you think is driving such a huge backlash to the flock cameras? Why are Americans finally being willing to stand up to them?
Well, maybe some of this is a reaction formation from the lockdowns, like, this sense of self-consciousness that became embedded in people through the lockdowns, like, you can't do this, you got to do social distancing. That was such a dramatic change for people. I think the benevolent slice of society is having the same experience with the flock cameras. And those things can only be used for ill. There's some apologists that say like, well, we're able to defeat crime with this. These are crime fighting tools. But the simplest crime fighting tool, if we're just talking policy, is to denaturalize and repatriate tens of millions of people across the country. But because the left has everybody so scared, there's this idea that would provoke like a violent backlash or something like this. It just simply doesn't happen. The left is they're doing something different now. I think that they have enough numbers. I don't think they need to really worry about. They've broken the will of a lot of people, and I don't think they have to worry about repatriation at this point. And so they are doing something different now, which is just to like take as much housing and as much welfare as possible. So I think that you're looking at this, and if you're a person of good conscience and going like, why do I need to be watched? The only people that need to be watched are like newcomers, really. And that's kind of a political statement, but it's largely true. And so I don't know. Those cameras are just going to keep going up. I think it's a futile effort for probably the basic fact of just the general demoralization of people. I think it's a futile effort for the time being. And I think maybe you're best to seek legal recourse in order to try to change that, legislate it out of your like area or whatever. So I wouldn't recommend people go cutting those things down. It's just a way of creating a huge liability in your life. And it is a symptom of the demoralization. So.
Yeah, it's surprising. I mean, I would have thought that Americans were just so willing to let anything happen now that they would just let these cameras go up. But it seems that there is some actual real backlash. But where do we go from here? Play out the rest of the 2020s in your mind. Who is elected in 2028, and what's the price of Bitcoin?
Oh my gosh. Well, I never hang my head on prognostication. I thought Trump was going to get in that second time. And I lost some cash on those betting markets, So I don't do prognostication too much, but I would say if Trump is just handing victories to the left. I mean, there's a 50% chance that, and it had been in favor of the Republicans for a little bit there. There's a 50% chance that the Dems capture the Senate. And I don't know where the House odds are at this point. You're just stuck with it's just a terrible set of alternatives. You have on the one hand, like these crazed Maoists, I think is the right word for them. And then on the other hand, you have these crazed Zionists who they just have never met a war they didn't like and are happy to make a prison society of everything and ride off into the sunset on their yachts with as much money as they possibly can. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And either way it goes, U.S. elections are not secure. Like the elections were not made secure by Trump getting Marianne Adelson to put her fingers down on the scales. Like that doesn't secure our elections. I think people like like Biden's in power. Trump just made a better deal with the people that that run the world, and Biden didn't make as good of a deal. And so that's no guarantee of like election security or anything like this. So you can't really trust the result. Either way, it's going to serve the same group of people. And so I'm not too, like, I can't sit here and say, I think that blue team's going to win or red team's going to win. The price of Bitcoin, I think, does track a bit with the form of rape. Am I allowed to say rape? Is this going up on YouTube? I don't know. I can't say that word. But the flavor of coercion that we go through, Bitcoin seems to be a little bit more dependent on that. So I think if the left gets in, then Bitcoin will be like a crazy high price within a few years. And I think if Marco Rubio gets in or JD Vance gets in, I think it's just going to be more warfare, and Bitcoin is going to stay stagnant, and that'll just be kind of depressing. So.
Well, there you have it. Well, I appreciate you wading into politics, even though you don't like to do it so much these days.
Yeah, I keep an eye on it, but I think every man has to. If you're a man, especially if you're a man in America, I think you need to. But yeah, I really I live in a world of like I'm very effective with people personally. You know, I do my coaching practice, and I'm a peaceful parent, and so my main feedback that I get, and maybe why I trip over my words a little bit when it comes to politics, the main feedback I'm getting really is at a personal level. And it is really a joy for me every day what I get to do in this world, which is to see people pick up new vocations, new careers, learn something new about themselves, see their interactions differently, build a different kind of empathy for the people that they're interacting with based on, my feedback and philosophical principles. I get to see people integrate new knowledge and become more effective and successful and happy, particularly happy as a result of increased rationality. And so I'm able to affect that at a very micro scale. I mean, when I first came into public influencing, I admit a little bit of this sort of Ayn Randian hubris, like, okay, we have the best arguments. When she released Atlas Shrugged and it was starting to blow up, she was like, oh my gosh, she's like saying to Nathaniel Brennan, oh my gosh, the world is actually going to change. This book actually did it. And I remember feeling that way when I first came, it was a night for freedom and Trump had just won. And I'm going, yes, like we have the logic of personal relationships down. We brought philosophy into that sphere of things. We have peaceful parenting, and we have the sound economics, and we have the Bitcoin, and it's all coming together. And no, but it's really up to people to decide, and people are in a bad condition, and the voices necessary to reach out to those people have been censored, wildly so. And so now I live in a much like sort of reduced circumstance where I'm going like, no, I don't need to like try to blow up my spot. I don't need to get on InfoWars and then like get on Piers Morgan. And I don't need to chase down Andrew Tate, and I don't need to do all this signal boosting that I felt I needed to do before. But it just meant a contraction in expectations. And I'm happy to live within that.
Let's leave it on a message of hope. I think that you were getting there. The fact that it is the only change you can affect in the world is on the individual level. And I think the older that you get, the more you feel that, right? Even the most powerful people, it is because they changed themselves that they were able to affect the world. So what gives you hope looking forward? And what message of personal change do you have for the world?
Well, I think popular movements just move along based on what people are ready to hear. And I'm glad that people are hearing a lot of things. I'm seeing some things that are pretty spicy on Twitter, and it's all political. So, but just pointing out who are the real power players, like who is Trump really answering to? What is the real anatomy of power in the world? I'm seeing some really interesting things come out from that, but I think that people still have not made the personal leap, and everything just kind of operates off of the bigotry of the masses and like what people are ready to hear. And so it's kind of funny for me to be this just, I think, the most doe-eyed like enthusiast in the history of modern history. like just coming into the world like, yes, like I have been so good. I have been such a good person, and I really have helped people. And so that means that people are going to go with it because I've had some limited success personally. And to just see like everyone's like, no, we want to watch the Minions, and we want to like eat at McDonald's or whatever. Like, no, we don't want to do that. Not yet. We just want to like name them for a few years. Like, the society lags behind moral progress and moral innovation. I mean, it's not moral innovation. It's like philosophical innovation. And so learning to be patient with that lag time, I think, is really critically important for your sanity, for anybody's sanity. And so the world is not ready. There's this like old saying that the truth spreads like wildfire. And it's only like what people are ready to hear. And people are like, how could you get people to be skeptical of their families when Islam has like completely taken over Minnesota, and they're just operating on like a familial power basis, and they're taking over the planet like this? How can you expect people to be like skeptical of their family, like the power structure in their family being abused by their parents and stuff like this? How can you really expect that to spread at a wide scale? So you almost need to be satisfied with, say, this Ella Langley. You know, she just has the #1 hit right now, and she's displaced Mariah Carey and some other black lady, Whitney Houston. She's had the longest running #1 single in America, like in history. And you have to satisfy yourself with stuff like that. You have to go and you look at that and you try to understand why it's popular with people. Why would people be switching to that? Why is Ben Shapiro like diminishing? And why is, I don't know, Tucker Carlson, maybe? Why is he like ascendant? Well, I don't. That's not a great comparison. But why are these levers moving like this? And what is going on in people? And what are they prepared to hear? What are they prepared to receive? I'm not necessarily going to change to do that, but it's possible. It's possible for people, and I think that's a really cool spot. I mean, I think a lot of young people are figuring that out. They're figuring out how to be sticky and how to catch on with other people based on what they're ready to hear. That's not where I operate. I don't want to be there. But that gives me a lot of hope. Seeing people find that wiggle room, how to speak to the masses, how to find the give, and how to move people along. And maybe I'll change, and maybe I'll want to do that. Maybe I pride myself too much on being on the bleeding edge, or what I think is the bleeding edge, and maybe I'll change. But there's a risk associated with that as well. So I'm happy with where I'm positioned for now. And it does give me hope to see a lot of people finding that wiggle room.
Well, there you have it. If people want to reach out to you, Stephen, and get your personal services, find out your music, your Telegram chat, where should they go?
Well, I think you can go to stephenfranssen.com. I think that's probably the best place to find me. I do have some links there, but you can look me up on Telegram. Franssen is my channel's name, and you can find me on X. It's just a lot of banter over on X. I do less content than I used to, but I'm happy about that. Like I feel like I just want to be kind of more in a quiet place and thinking about things and just working behind the scenes. I really like that. So you're not going to see as much content as you used to from me, but that's where you can find me generally.
Cheers. Well, it's been great to have you on twice so far in 2026. Sure, yeah. And we'll have you on once again. Great conversation. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Rob.